Tonight, a punishing blast of snow, ice pellets, and rain pounds eastern Canada. The commotion, closures, delays, and digging out.
Ridiculous. Way too much. Way too much.
It's truly a real Canadian winter this year.
What to expect from the next major system already in the forecast. Donald Trump kicks off a global tariff war and why Canada is still in his crosshairs.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens.
She said, "I'm sorry, it's bad news."
And how a New Brunswick woman found out she had been declared dead. Plus, a historic hockey showdown marking a shared past. And a jaw-dropping marine encounter. Caught on camera, a kayaker's stunning story of survival.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. Just as millions of Canadians in eastern Canada are cleaning up from a massive winter storm, some regions are bracing for another big punch tonight. This is what it looked like at daybreak in the nation's capital. At Toronto's Pearson Airport, crews raced to clear the runways. A slippery drive in Montreal, and in New Brunswick, all schools canceled. We'll tell you what's in the forecast in just a few minutes, but our coverage begins with CTV's Heather Wright on the chaos in Ontario.
The snowbanks are higher than the trucks in some parts of the province today, after the biggest storm of the winter rolled through parts of southern Ontario overnight, forcing many schools to close and Canada Post to cancel deliveries for the day. 26 centimeters of snow was recorded at Toronto's Pearson Airport, where dozens of flights were canceled or delayed. By morning, the snowblowers were out in force, as were the shovels. Even the littlest helpers put to work.
Yeah, it's nice, but hopefully it finishes around the end of February.
Schools and daycares in many parts of the province were forced to close, kids flocking to toboggan hills instead.
I think it's better than school because learning is boring.
The City of Toronto says by 8:30 this morning, all major roads had been plowed at least twice, but because of how much snow fell and the drizzle that followed, the snow is very heavy, and they say it's going to take longer than usual to get all the plowing done.
We'll need to continue to be plowing throughout the day and into Friday.
The slick streets making for tough commutes for some and long commutes for many.
I'm going to work like 2 hours prior from my shift.
Just to make sure you could get there in time.
Yeah, exactly.
And while some love the snow,
so I skied down my front steps to the park.
Others are a bit more honest with their opinions.
I hate it. It's not only the snow, it's where to put it.
Another winter storm is in the forecast for this weekend, and with temperatures expected to remain well below freezing here in southern Ontario, the City of Toronto is planning to begin snow removal on Monday. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Southern Quebec is also expecting another storm this weekend. In Montreal, more than 30 centimeters of snow buried the city. And that's where we find CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin. And Jen, the city slammed but spared from the worst.
Well, the wind is really kicking that snow around, Omar, tonight, but it has been an overall very difficult day. More than 30 centimeters fell on the streets of Montreal here today. Some had forecast more than 40, but that didn't come to pass. Still, as I say, it is quite the blizzard tonight. Now, there were more than 1,000 workers in Montreal clearing 10,000 kilometers of roads and sidewalks all day. Overall, traffic was not so bad because people heeded warnings to stay home with those daycares, schools, high schools, universities closed today. And so many people stayed indoors. Still, there were delays, there were flight cancellations, and there was some slipping and sliding. You can hear some of the shovelers and travelers.
It was canceled already, the first one. We're supposed to leave at 5. And it was canceled. We changed, and now we're going to change for a direct flight with Air Canada.
I wasn't going out today. I said, I'll play it safe, you know. I listen to the news. They say, stay home. If you don't have to go out, stay home. So I listen to them.
Just seeing the snow accumulating on the branch of the trees, it's just beautiful. It makes me feel grateful.
And what about, I mean, the
shoveling. What about those parts of it?
Oh, I'm trying to look up rather than down.
Now the question is when they'll be able to start clearing the snow, the stuff that the wind doesn't blow away, because there is another snowstorm coming, more than 30 centimeters. So the city is saying it doesn't know whether it will just wait until that's come through to clear, to cart away all these snowbanks. Omar.
It just keeps on coming. All right, Genevieve, thank you. CTV meteorologist Kelsey McEwen joins us now. Kelsey, walk us through tomorrow and right into the weekend. What can we expect?
Omar, widespread impact of this one. 6 provinces seeing that snowfall and freezing rain for some, rain in parts of Nova Scotia. It continues to be an impact within Newfoundland, Labrador right as we head into Friday morning. Now, here's the nitty gritty of it. The big thing on the back end of it has been the wind. We've seen that kick up lake effect snow across Lake Huron, Georgian Bay. Snow continues to move its way eastward across Newfoundland and Labrador with a freezing rain potential. But as those winds persist in behind, we will see that subsequent temperature fall through the next couple of days in the lower Great Lakes. Now, snow will continue, snow and freezing rain in Newfoundland, Labrador, northern Quebec, right as we go through the day on Friday, clearing by evening. And as that pushes its way out, we turn our eyes to what's coming next. This time, snow will move into more northern communities right around Superior. This is going to be the story through Saturday. Right now, it looks like a little bit less, maybe 5 to 15 centimeters of snow expected across the lower Great Lakes, and a little more on and off in its frequency. Now, here's the tricky part. As we look at the close forecast, that next couple of days, the resolution's pretty high on these computer models, but watch what happens as I look farther out. I have to flip to a different computer model and see how the precipitation changes. This tells me that there's still uncertainty with that weekend outlook. We know that there will be snow this weekend. It looks like the majority of it will be Saturday. It may continue for Sunday as well. We might get into mixing again across Lake Erie, parts of Lake Ontario, but certainly for Atlantic Canada as well. This becomes the story into early next week with a temperature drop in behind that. We're certainly not warming up anytime soon as we go towards the end of February. Omar?
Which is great news for anybody who loves the cold. Kelsey, thank you. Donald Trump is putting a chill on America's trading relationships, today moving one step closer to slapping tariffs on any country with its own tariffs on U.S. goods. As CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon reports, it's a move Trump sees as evening the playing field.
Well, that's a good one.
Another day and another threat of tariffs. The U.S. president promising to use his economic sledgehammer on America's trading partners.
They charge us a tax or tariff, and we charge them.
The president upending global trade relations, signing a memo Trump directed his trade advisors to calculate tit-for-tat tariffs on every U.S. trading partner in the world. Even as Trump hosted India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the White House.
He is a great friend of mine.
Trump took a swipe earlier, accusing his guest of unfair trade practices.
India traditionally is the highest, just about the highest tariffed country.
Trump wants India to buy more American goods and found a willing partner.
They're going to be purchasing a lot of our oil and gas.
India also increasing military sales, including buying stealth fighters. It's all part of Trump's art of the deal, threaten and pull back. But Trump admits Americans could face hardship.
Prices could go up somewhat short term, but prices will also go down. If you build here, you have no tariffs whatsoever. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Economists warn Trump's love of tariffs could trigger a global trade war and drive up inflation. It's already spiking.
There are a lot of deep contradictions in Trumponomics, one of which is his desire to have low interest rates and high tariffs and low inflation. Tariffs will be inflationary. Period. End of story.
And Trump's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum on Canada and Mexico, paused for now, had Ford CEO Jim Farley warning the industry.
Let's be real honest. Long term, a 25% tariff across the Mexico and Canadian border would blow a hole in the U.S. industry that we have never seen.
The president has hyped these new tariffs as the big one, but there's no starting date and they may or may not go into effect by April. Omar?
All right, Joy Malbon in Washington. Joy, thank you. And standing by in Ottawa is CTV's Jeremy Charon. Jeremy, what did the U.S. president have to say about Canada?
Omar, while Canada appears likely to avoid the brunt of the tariffs announced today, we certainly didn't go unnoticed. Due to Canada's existing free trade agreement with the U.S., today's executive order likely won't impact Canada to the same degree as other countries. But as Trump looks to study unfair trade practices, there is a sense he wants to renegotiate that deal sooner than next year when it's due for review. Today, Canada's transport minister said this on CTV's Power Play about starting those talks earlier than planned.
We are very open to having that conversation as early as the Trump administration would like.
Now, Trump today also talked about non-tariff trade barriers, which he's aiming to counteract. It isn't clear whether measures Canada takes to protect sectors like the dairy or softwood lumber industries could be a target. What is clear, the president still sees Canada as the 51st state.
So I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state. I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens.
The president also pointed again to Canada not reaching NATO's 2% of GDP target on defense spending as a reason for our country to be its next state. That's despite repeated responses from Canadian officials, including premiers in Washington this week, saying that won't happen, and the president wouldn't say how talks are going with Canada, with across-the-board 25% tariffs set to come into effect March 4th. Omar?
Jeremy, thank you. A day after the high-stakes call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, the Ukrainian president has a message. There won't be a peace deal without him.
Зберегти підтримку Сполучених Штатів.
Volodymyr Zelensky raised concerns his country will be sidelined after Trump announced Russia was open to ending the Ukraine war. Later, the White House and the Kremlin attempted to allay fears, saying Kyiv will be involved in peace talks. A terrifying situation in Germany today when a car drove into a crowd of people at a labor union demonstration in Munich. At least 28 people were hurt, including some children. Officials believe it was a deliberate attack and have arrested a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker. Dashcam video captured the moment a gas explosion happened on the 12th floor of a building in Taiwan. 4 people were killed and 26 injured. Authorities say the blast took place in the food court of a department store. And this was the moment a U.S. fighter jet plunged into the San Diego harbor. The 2 pilots ejected just before the crash and were safely rescued by a nearby fishing boat. Back here, the 2-month GST break is coming to an end this weekend. So did it lead to a surge in sales? CTV's Allison Bamford has the initial verdict.
38.12.
This weekend, Quinton Nordic will ring in his final customers under the GST holiday, a tax break that brought in a few more sales than usual for this time of year.
I even had a few customers where they actually told me that that's why they came in for that item.
He's one of a lucky few. New data from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business shows only 5% of small businesses saw stronger sales compared to last year at this time, with 70% reporting no real change in spending or sales. That's how the tax break unfolded at this Saskatoon clothing store.
So I think if anything, it just led to more confusing conversations with our customers in store who thought it applied to everything.
At the onset, the GST break was a major headache to implement for many small retailers. In some cases, stores spent hundreds of hours checking inventory to see what items applied. Others spent upwards of $1,000 on IT support to get new systems in place.
A policy that sounds good on paper. I mean, who doesn't want, a 5+% discount on anything? Doesn't necessarily translate in practice.
The hospitality sector benefited the most from the GST break, according to CFIB data, but inside this Saskatoon brewery, sales stayed status quo over the holiday.
At the start, we were really hoping that it might get people out, spend some more money.
Consumers got a break at the till, but we spoke to some who say it didn't make a difference in their spending.
Not really. I haven't bought much.
I'm glad the government made that intervention. I think they need to do something more.
It should be less of a headache for retailers to reverse the GST holiday, but there's a bit of worry that shoppers could see this as a price hike over the weekend, and advocates for small businesses wonder how that might affect consumer spending. Allison Bamford, CTV News, Saskatoon.
An about-face from BC's NDP government, which now says it is cancelling a promised $1,000 grocery rebate. The government blames the economic uncertainty over Donald Trump's looming tariffs, and it says it will also freeze hiring of some public service positions.
These are unprecedented economic times. We could never imagine a situation where our closest neighbor has essentially declared economic warfare on Canada.
The decision comes nearly 2 weeks after Premier David Eby called BC the least trade-exposed province to the U.S., but added it would be profoundly damaging to families and businesses. Coming up, fatal flaw.
They need to be really careful about what they're entering on files.
What happens when the government thinks you're dead? Plus, a father films his own worst nightmare. We have a strange story for you out of New Brunswick tonight. A senior recently found out that the government thought she was dead. CTV's Sarah Plowman spoke to her about the challenging road to resurrecting her lost benefits.
It took a month and a half for Kathy Adams to clue in she'd been deemed dead.
I mean, you have to laugh.
She felt fine, but her old age security and Canada Pension Plan payments stopped. She called Service Canada.
She said, I'm sorry, it's bad news. But on December 13th, it was noted that you were deceased. And then she was very sweet. She said, my condolences. And both of us laughed.
That person couldn't fix it, but flagged the issue as urgent. Adams made nearly 24 calls. She reached her member of parliament, called Service Canada back for more information, and went to the local office to prove she is alive. That's where she learned what happened.
A niece had called in and reported a death. She asked if I knew this person, and I said, no, I didn't. She said, well, that's obviously been put on the wrong account.
As CTV News interviewed Adams, a director with Service Canada called.
And I do want to, express my, apologies for sure in terms of the error, and I know that it definitely, has been inconvenient for you.
They confirmed no personal information was compromised. Adams saw similar stories online and thinks there should be a faster and easier way to correct the record.
They need to either be really careful about what they're entering on files or have some protocols that it can be corrected very, very quickly without the person having, like myself, having to do all the running around.
Tonight, Adams' social insurance number is reactivated. She's once again receiving her CPP and old age security payments, but still has to call a call center to get her Service Canada account unlocked. Employment and Social Development Canada says what happened is exceptionally rare. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
Still ahead, celebrating an important moment in Black hockey history. Canada is off to a spectacular start at the Four Nations face-off.
Crosby delayed and sets up Marner, full stride into the zone. Mitch Marner scores!
A thrilling overtime goal for Mitch Marner with an assist from Sidney Crosby won the game against Sweden.
You tell 8 or 10-year-old Mitch that he scored an overtime goal assisted by Sidney Crosby, the guy he looked up to since day one. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the bench when he scored, so he did all the work.
Canada is back in action Saturday against the U.S., who played Finland in their first game tonight. Fans at the Bell Centre in Montreal booed the American anthem, which is happening more frequently during the current trade tensions. Black hockey history is taking center ice this weekend in Nova Scotia, celebrating a league that paved the way for African-Canadian hockey heroes. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth on the powerful living legacy.
The Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes began play in 1895 and was around for 35 years. Players in the All Black Hockey League endured racism while playing at a high level. The league now stands as a symbol for equality and advancement for African Canadians.
It's recognized by Parks Canada recently as an event of national historic significance.
This Saturday, the 130th anniversary of the CHL will be celebrated with a commemorative exhibition game.
We're celebrating the very first recorded game, which happened on February 27th, 1895.
Bill Riley will also be honored in a pre-game ceremony. Riley was the first African Nova Scotian to reach the National Hockey League.
And then the fact that, hey, little old me from Amherst, Nova Scotia, is actually playing in these Hall of Fame arenas, that was very, very special to me.
The game itself will feature a mix of current elite-level hockey players playing alongside some former local hockey stars, all coming together to celebrate a meaningful chapter of hockey history in this country. According to Nova Scotia native and former university star player Percy Paris, honoring the legacy of the Colored Hockey League sends an inclusive message to African Canadians.
We are part of the fabric of this country. We've made contributions.
Paris says to have the league recognized helps to ensure the contributions of these trailblazing players will never be forgotten. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia.
Still ahead, the moment a kayaker thought he was dead. A young man has survived a shocking encounter with a humpback whale, and it was all caught on camera by his father. Here's CTV's Adrian Gobriel on the drama at sea.
A surreal scene on the open water as a kayaker disappears into the gaping mouth of a humpback whale. The day began with Adrian Samankis and his father preparing to head out for a kayaking excursion off the southern coast of Chile, though nothing could have prepared them for what they would encounter. With the camera rolling, one moment the younger Samankis is there, the next he vanishes into the open mouth of a whale, only to re-emerge after being released from the jaws of the gentle giant. As he's sent flailing back into the sea, the humpback appears again. His father, Del Samankis, can be heard calling on his son to stay calm, which, understandably, was easier said than done. Back on dry land, Samankis admits that he thought he had died, saying, "There was a lot of terror. There was nothing I could do." Paddled to safety by his father, the whole ordeal has all the hallmarks of a Disney classic.
I'm sorry, Father. I apologize for all the trouble I caused.
We'll be one big happy.
Though chance encounters with whales are far from fiction. November 2020, two friends were nearly caught by a hungry humpback that was feeding in coastal California waters. July 2013, in a sea of sardines, a couple of divers are nearly engulfed by the gargantuan gullets of not one, but two hulking humpbacks. As for the Samankis family, like others, they've now been left with a whale of a story, and they have the video to prove it. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Frightening moments. That's a snapshot of this Thursday. Hope you can join Heather tomorrow. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night.